Jon Husband, the father of the hierarchy concept. It's a very, very great pleasure for me to be here with you, John.
And likewise.
So we have a few questions for you. A question I keep on asking myself is, how does the hierarchy concept dovetails with the social business approach?
It depends, I think, first of all, very much on what we mean by social business, but taken as granted that people understand that this is about a more connected environment and an ecosystem of connected people and information, where the information is flowing, then hierarchy is an organizing principle like the other words that end in archy, and it's really combining the Greek suffix archy with the word wired. In other words, what is the social architecture and the organizational architecture of a wired and interconnected environment? So what it means then in the context of social business is all of the things that we're hearing about the reduction in effectiveness, for example, of command and control, or the fact that your information can flow very quickly to where it's needed, when it's needed, it can be acted upon, that we need a community of people in order to address the complexity in organizations. These are all elements of this new organizing principle, hierarchy. So that's how it relates. It really informs many of the dynamics and the new examples of organizational structures we are seeing. So I'll offer a specific example. When I've been writing about hierarchy over the years, I've often referred back to organizational development principles. So developing with the people in an organization a shared vision, shared values, trusting people more, providing them with more autonomy and empowerment, and so on. And I noticed in the tweet stream of today that a very well-known author, Steve Denning, who wrote about radical management, is now having weekly sessions online where he discusses, and week 3 is now about radical management, is about self-organizing teams. So as an example, hierarchy is the kind of principle that would say it really implies self-organizing teams around a business problem, around an objective, around an issue or opportunity.
Some people tend to misunderstand hierarchy and oppose it to hierarchy, and that's not really the case in your view, is it?
No, that's not really the case. I think that what we have is we've had in organizations for the last 50 years, because of some methods and because of what's called Taylorism and the seeking of efficiency, relatively rigid structures where a lot of the power, or almost all of the power and decision-making is concentrated at the top of the organization. That's what I call traditional hierarchy. What I argue hierarchy is an evolution of organizations facing complexity, where in some instances and in many instances some kind of hierarchy is necessary. But it will be more temporary and it will be more intelligent. In other words, it's this person who knows this or has this kind of accountability is the person in charge for the next month, let's say. So we're going to continue to see hierarchy. It's very effective in many ways for people when they need to take decisions together, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And that's what has happened in the last 50 years. It's become, because you're here on the organization chart, you're the boss. And there are many examples of people working around that and or introducing dissonance and friction, but it remains the case that officially that person is the boss. So we're seeing an evolution of this concept where I would say the aspect of being wired and interconnected is bringing us to the need for more intelligent, more responsive, and more temporary hierarchies.
Okay. How would you explain that most companies are still struggling to implement this approach and reap the benefits out of it?
Well, I think it's very much a structural thing, and it touches on just what I said today. Most of the methods for structuring work, designing work, involve understanding an area and then saying that it goes back to some of the aspects of Taylorism, which is division of labor, specialization of tasks, And those then get written up in a job description. And in order to do things as simple as pay people a certain level of salary, we know of the term pay grades or salary levels. And there are methods that actually structure hierarchies quite rigidly to arrive at those things. These are why HR needs reinvention, very deep reinvention. Now, the issue that's specific to the resistance today is that all of this kind of work in organizing started in the 1950s. So we now have 60 years of it being embedded, along with a lot of management science that's really focused on things like execution and getting things just right and certain kinds of strategy. And hyperlinks and the web have effectively tossed all that up into the air.
Okay. We're talking a lot about employee engagement in this conference.
Yes.
But is that more of a problem or a consequence of the organization you were mentioning?
It's both a problem and a consequence, and thirdly, a real opportunity. Organizational theorists, very well-known ones like Chris Argyris and Russell Ackoff and others, talked a lot about employee engagement 25, 30 years ago. There was also 25 or 30 years ago a field that emerged out of organizational development called socio-technical systems, which was really the first time that there began to be information technology come along and meet the workplace. And one of the things that they found quite early on in the research of socio-technical systems was that the ideas that they were looking for, which was more empowerment, decentralization of decision-making, increasing the responsibilization of people, in other words, they have more responsibility, more decision-making, worked much better in what are called greenfield sites than brownfield sites. In other words, a greenfield site is when we start from scratch. And so we designed the work together, and out of that came methods like participative work design. In other words, here's the problem, let's throw the stuff up on the board and decide who's going to do what, by when, and with whom, and what resources, and so on. So taking responsibility for your own work. That is fine, but employee engagement is very dependent on context, very dependent upon purpose, and very dependent upon values. For many years I worked at times as a facilitator, and if you're facilitating a group of employees about, what do we need to do better or how do we need to get engaged with things, the number one thing at the top of the flip charts always is the leaders need to walk their talk.
Okay, so what are your key takeaway for the conference this year?
My key takeaway, and it's related to the "Is Social Business Dead" meme that went around for a while, which is, I think, the first and second waves of Enterprise 2.0 and then social business. Et je me souviens d'avoir été interviewé par collaboratif.info ici en France, et le titre de l'entrevue était "L'entreprise 2.0 se bâtira en vague." So there have been a couple waves, but that has mainly been technologists with collaborative platforms saying these are now the productivity platforms, you need collaboration, and they're discovering organizational sociology. But it's a lot like the 1990s when we had a long wave of the implementation of ERP systems that didn't go so very well because the sociology is complex. And so my position is that these first two times has really been about selling some consulting, about integrating the platforms into the information management systems and popularizing to some degree the notion that the workplace is different now, and now the real work is just starting. And it's going to be quite difficult because we're talking about deconstructing and unlearning methods that have been in place for 60 or 70 years, along with the attitudes and expectations of people about what work is. So it's just starting.
Okay, thank you very much, Jon.
You're welcome.